The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension. A holographic projection of the battlefield flickered before them. Fire, wreckage, and the overwhelming advance of the Xel'Vorr. The biomechanical monstrosities tore through entrenched positions with ruthless efficiency. Every Allied force had tried to stop them, and every attempt had failed. Seated around the grand circular table, representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy debated their next move. "The Xel'Vorr are too many," growled Vorlak's High General Drask, his reptilian scales glinting under the chamber's artificial light. "We must retreat and cut our losses. Throwing more troops into this slaughter is insanity." "Agreed," chimed in Xeran Fleet Commander Cthax, her mandibles clicking. "Our technology surpasses theirs, yet we cannot match their adaptability. We are running out of options." A pause settled over the council until the voice of the human ambassador cut through the silence. "We have a battalion ready to deploy." The chamber erupted into murmurs. Drask scoffed. "More of your fragile warriors? Your kind is resourceful, I'll grant you that, but your soldiers are as mortal as any of ours. What difference can they possibly make?" The ambassador smiled slightly. "They're not just any soldiers. They're veterans." A moment of silence. "Veterans?" Cthax tilted her head. "Yes. Retired soldiers. Some fought wars before your species even achieved spaceflight." The ambassador folded his arms. "They've seen more battles than any of your commanders combined." The reaction was immediate: disbelief, outrage, and amusement. "You expect us to believe that sending aged warriors to the front will turn the tide?" Drask's voice dripped with disdain. The elderly delegate, a pale, ethereal being with eyes that shimmered like distant stars, regarded the ambassador carefully. "Humans have a history of unpredictability," she mused. "What do you know that we do not?" The ambassador leaned forward. "War isn't about youth, strength, or technology. War is about survival. And there's no one better at surviving than an old soldier." Still, the council hesitated. The idea was absurd. Yet, the Xel'Vorr were unstoppable, and options were dwindling. After a tense deliberation, the council reluctantly approved the deployment. It wasn't confidence that swayed them, it was desperation. Moments later, the order was given. Across the war-torn sectors, the remaining forces prepared to receive their reinforcements. When the transport ships finally arrived, what stepped off the ramps left them stunned. The human soldiers were old. Some bore scars so deep they looked carved into their very souls. Their armor was scratched, their weapons worn but well maintained. Some had cybernetic limbs, not the sleek enhancements of elite troops but rugged, functional replacements. The younger alien soldiers exchanged skeptical glances. Was this humanity's answer to the Xel'Vorr? In the Galactic Council chamber, Drask smirked. "This will be a massacre." The human ambassador simply chuckled. "Yes," he said, "but not the kind you're expecting." The battlefield stretched for miles, a wasteland of shattered steel and burning wreckage. The air reeked of scorched flesh and ionized metal. Across the trenches, battered remnants of the Galactic Council's forces huddled behind cover, their morale crumbling with every passing hour. The Xel'Vorr pressed forward relentlessly, their biomechanical forms gliding over the ruins with deadly precision. From their vantage points, alien soldiers watched as human reinforcements arrived. The sight did not inspire confidence. The veterans disembarked with measured steps, their expressions unreadable. No polished exosuits, no cutting-edge weapons, just battered rifles, old armor, and the weathered faces of men and women who had seen too much war. A young Xeran officer sneered. "These are our reinforcements. The council has truly lost its mind." A Vorlak soldier snorted. "They can barely walk straight. The Xel'Vorr will tear them apart in minutes." Even the Xel'Vorr hesitated at first. Their war algorithms processed the new arrivals, identifying them as low-priority targets. The humans registered as weak, slow, and outdated. The enemy advanced without concern, confident in another swift slaughter. Then, a shot rang out. A single Xel'Vorr commander's head snapped back, its core ruptured in an instant. The sniper who fired didn't move, didn't celebrate. He simply adjusted his aim and pulled the trigger again. Another kill. Then another. The old soldiers spread out methodically, positioning themselves with eerie precision. They didn't scramble for cover. They selected it. They didn't fire in panic. They picked their shots, landing each one with brutal efficiency. A wave of Xel'Vorr drones rushed forward, expecting resistance to falter. It didn't. The veterans didn't fire wildly into the swarm. They aimed for the joints, the optics, the energy cores. They knew where to hit, and they hit hard. The younger alien soldiers, who had fought in sheer desperation, began to notice the difference. The humans weren't reacting to the battle. They were controlling it. They moved with an economy of motion, no wasted effort, no unnecessary risk. They worked in teams without speaking, covering each other instinctively. One human, a grizzled sergeant with a prosthetic leg, signaled a group of alien recruits to follow. "Stick close, keep your fire disciplined." The recruits hesitated but obeyed. The moment they fell into step with the old soldier, the fight changed. He didn't charge blindly into battle. He led them into ambush points, used the terrain to funnel the enemy, forced the Xel'Vorr into kill zones. Within minutes, they had taken down more of the enemy than they had in days. An elderly officer, observing from the command post, whispered in stunned realization. "They're not just fighting. They're teaching." The Galactic Council, watching from orbit, expected carnage. They got it. But it wasn't the humans who were being slaughtered. The Xel'Vorr adapted quickly. Their battle algorithms recalculated the threat level of the human reinforcements, shifting from dismissive to high priority. Their response was immediate, a concentrated assault aimed at overwhelming the old soldiers before they could solidify their foothold. But these were not standard troops. They didn't panic. They didn't break formation. They had seen worse, fought harder, and outlasted deadlier enemies. Instead of engaging head-on, the veterans shifted tactics. They moved with ruthless efficiency, predicting the enemy's advances before they happened. The Xel'Vorr relied on pattern recognition, expecting soldiers to react in predictable ways. The old warriors didn't. One Xel'Vorr squad advanced in a standard flanking maneuver, its drones spreading out in perfect synchronization. The response was instant. A handful of veterans disappeared into the ruins, using ancient guerrilla tactics that predated interstellar warfare. Booby traps, misdirection, controlled retreats. Within minutes, the machines found themselves funneled into a choke point, their advantage turned into a death trap. A single command from an old human officer, and the entire kill box was annihilated in a precision strike. A group of young alien soldiers, having witnessed the tactic, stared in stunned disbelief. A human corporal grinned. "War's not about who's faster. It's about who's smarter." Elsewhere, another squad of veterans engaged the enemy with brutal efficiency. They didn't spray plasma wildly. Every shot was deliberate. Ammo was conserved. Cover was used to its fullest. They didn't run, they repositioned. Their battle-hardened instincts allowed them to see opportunities before they even appeared. A Xel'Vorr warform, towering over the battlefield, charged into the fray, its plasma cannons glowing with lethal energy. The younger troops braced for destruction. The veterans didn't flinch. One of them, an old sergeant with a cybernetic eye, gave a simple order. "Bait it." A single shot rang out, striking just enough to get the machine's attention. It turned, sensors locking onto what it believed to be an easy target. The veteran waited. Just long enough. Then he moved, one step to the left. The Xel'Vorr fired, its cannon blast hitting nothing but empty space. Before it could correct, another soldier fired, hitting an exposed power junction. The warform staggered. A final blast from an ancient projectile rifle, an outdated weapon by modern standards, tore through its core. The machine collapsed. The battle raged on, but the momentum had shifted. The Xel'Vorr, for the first time, struggled. They relied on algorithms. The humans relied on something else. Experience. The Galactic Council watched in silence. The battle had become something they had never seen before, not a clash of brute force, not a test of superior technology. It was a masterclass in warfare. And the old soldiers were the teachers. The battlefield was unrecognizable. What had once been a war zone of desperation and retreat was now a tactical masterpiece of controlled destruction. The Xel'Vorr, once relentless in their advance, were now struggling to hold ground. Their warforms lay in smoldering heaps, their swarms broken and scattered. For the first time in the conflict, they were retreating. Alien soldiers, who only days before had fought in sheer terror, now moved with newfound confidence. The old human soldiers had taught them, not through speeches, not through orders, but by showing them how to fight, how to survive. They had turned raw recruits into warriors. In the command center, the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. Every expectation they had, every assumption about the limits of human combat effectiveness, had been shattered. The elderly delegate was the first to speak. They have done what none of our finest strategists could. Drask, who had been the most vocal skeptic, stared at the data feeds in disbelief. They turned a losing war into a lesson, he muttered. And the Xel'Vorr failed the test. Thax exhaled sharply, her mandibles twitching. I do not understand, she admitted. They lack enhancements, they lack superior firepower, and yet they fight as if they have already won. The human ambassador gave a knowing smile. Because they have. The moment they set foot on that battlefield, they knew the outcome. The Xel'Vorr rely on numbers and precision. The veterans have something else, instinct. You can't program that. You earn it. Below, on the war-torn ground, the last remnants of the Xel'Vorr assault force crumbled under the final push. The old soldiers didn't celebrate. There was no cheering, no triumphant roars. They simply reloaded their weapons, checked on their wounded, and prepared to leave. A young Vorlax recruit hesitated before approaching one of the human sergeants. You saved us. His voice was uncertain, as if struggling to reconcile what he had just witnessed. How do you fight like that? The old soldier chuckled, adjusting the strap on his battered rifle. Son, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. War doesn't change. Just the fools who think they understand it. As the human veterans boarded their transports, preparing to leave the battlefield they had just saved, the younger alien troops stood at attention. A silent, unspoken gesture of respect. The Galactic Council, once dismissive, now watched them with something else. Not just gratitude. Not just respect. Fear. Because now they understood. Humans weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the most advanced. But they were the deadliest.